People often ask a very direct question: why does the United States seem to love Israel and hate Iran? The answer, of course, is not about emotion, but about a complex web of history, strategic interests, and recent events that have shaped American foreign policy for decades. This dynamic is not static. It evolves with every regional crisis and every new administration in Washington. To truly understand the headlines of today, on June 20th, 2025, we must look back at the critical turning points that set these two relationships on such profoundly different paths, creating a cornerstone of America's strategy in one of the world's most volatile regions. The story really begins in 1979. Before the Iranian Revolution, the United States pursued a twin-pillar strategy in the Middle East, relying on both Iran, under the Shah, and Saudi Arabia to protect its interests. The revolution shattered that framework. When the Shah was overthrown and an Islamic republic hostile to American influence was established, Washington lost a crucial strategic partner overnight. This seismic event forced a fundamental recalculation of U.S. policy. Suddenly, Israel, which had always been a close partner, grew immensely in strategic importance. It became the most reliable, democratic, and militarily capable ally for the U.S. in a region now defined by greater instability and overt anti-American sentiment. This policy shift solidified over the subsequent decades, cementing a deep and multifaceted alliance with Israel. The United States designated Israel as a major non-NATO ally, a powerful symbol of their bond that also provides tangible benefits in defense trade and security cooperation. This relationship is built on shared democratic values, but more pragmatically, on shared strategic goals, including countering terrorism and preventing the proliferation of nuclear weapons. As of April 2025, this partnership remains robust, evidenced by over 750 active foreign military sales cases valued at nearly $40 billion. It's a relationship underwritten not just by words, but by immense and ongoing material support. Conversely, the relationship with Iran has been defined by 4 decades of hostility and mistrust. From the hostage crisis of 1979 to Tehran's pursuit of nuclear capabilities and its support for proxy militias across the region, the points of friction have been numerous and severe. Recent events have only hardened these positions. While President Trump's administration has shown some willingness to engage in diplomacy, with talks beginning in April 2025, the overarching policy remains one of intense pressure. The core American objective has been consistent: to contain Iranian influence, curb its nuclear ambitions, and prevent it from destabilizing its neighbors, many of whom are also U.S. allies. The United States wields 2 primary instruments to enforce its policy in the Middle East: robust military support for its allies and crippling economic sanctions against its adversaries. The support for Israel is perhaps the most prominent example of this strategy in action. Israel stands as the largest cumulative recipient of U.S. foreign assistance since World War II, having received over $150 billion by early 2022. This aid is not just a blank check. It is a strategic investment designed to maintain Israel's qualitative military edge, ensuring it can defend itself against a multitude of threats in a hostile neighborhood, a policy that enjoys broad bipartisan support in Washington. On the other side of the ledger, the U.S. employs its economic dominance to isolate and weaken Iran. The maximum pressure campaign, though its application has varied, remains a central feature of U.S. policy. Just this month, on June 7, 2025, the Treasury Department announced a new wave of sanctions targeting individuals and companies linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. These measures aim to disrupt money laundering networks that fund Iran's nuclear and missile programs, effectively cutting off the financial lifeblood that sustains Tehran's most dangerous ambitions. These sanctions are a modern form of siege designed to force a change in behavior without firing a single shot. This dual-track approach is also reflected in the actions of the U.S. Congress. Lawmakers have consistently and overwhelmingly voted in favor of funding for Israeli defense systems like the Iron Dome. In stark contrast, they have pushed for ever tighter restrictions on Iran. A recent example is the Free Iraq from Iran bill, introduced in April 2025. This legislation mandates a strategy to dismantle Iran-backed militias in Iraq and imposes sanctions on Iraqi officials aligned with Tehran. It demonstrates a clear congressional intent to actively roll back Iranian influence across the region, treating it as a direct threat to American interests and regional stability. The logic behind this policy is deeply intertwined with the geography of the Middle East. The region is home to several of the world's largest oil and gas producers, and critically, three of the planet's most important maritime choke points, the Strait of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, and the Bab el-Mandab Strait. Any disruption to the flow of energy through these narrow waterways could trigger a global economic crisis. By supporting a strong and stable Israel and containing a disruptive Iran, the United States aims to secure these vital arteries of global commerce, ensuring the free flow of oil and maintaining its own position as the ultimate guarantor of international order. The geopolitical map of the Middle East has been dramatically redrawn over the past year, largely to Iran's detriment. By late 2024, Tehran's long-cultivated axis of resistance had suffered a series of devastating blows. The collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria deprived Iran of its most crucial state ally and a land bridge to the Levant. This, combined with successful Israeli operations that eliminated key leaders within Hezbollah and Hamas, has severely weakened Iran's network of regional proxies. Tehran now finds itself largely isolated, its ability to project power beyond its borders significantly curtailed, and its strategic depth eroded. Israel, in contrast, has seen its regional standing paradoxically strengthen. The successful Israeli strikes in June 2025 against Iran's nuclear facilities and military infrastructure demonstrated a remarkable military capability. These attacks, which neutralized key Iranian air defenses, have fundamentally altered the regional power balance. While the world holds its breath as President Trump gives diplomacy a 2-week window, the message is clear. Israel possesses both the will and the capacity to act unilaterally against what it perceives as existential threats. As a result, Israel increasingly looks less like a besieged state and more like a regional hegemon, a powerful and undeniable force in the Middle East. This shift has also reshaped attitudes among America's Arab allies. Before the conflicts of the last 2 years, Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE largely shared Israel's view that Iran was the overriding regional threat, even beginning a historic process of normalization. However, the recent direct confrontation between Israel and Iran has created a new divergence. While Israel urges decisive military action to finish the job, Washington's Arab partners now favor diplomacy, fearing that a wider war could engulf the entire region. This places the U.S. in a delicate position, trying to manage the anxieties of its Arab friends while supporting its Israeli ally. Iran's weakened position is not merely a result of external pressures, it is also a consequence of its own strategic overreach and internal vulnerabilities. The funds funneled to proxy wars and its nuclear program have come at a great cost to its own economy and people. The recent U.S. sanctions further squeeze an already strained system. Iran's threats to attack U.S. bases via its remaining militias, if America intervenes on Israel's behalf, sound more like a desperate gambit than a credible deterrent. Iran now appears far less of a threat to the Arab world, a shadow of its former regional influence. In conclusion, the core reasons for America's staunch support for Israel and its deep-seated opposition to Iran are rooted in a clear-eyed assessment of its national interests, shaped by decades of history. Israel is a stable and democratic and militarily potent ally in a chaotic region, serving as a bulwark for American influence. Its strength is seen in Washington as a direct asset. In contrast, the Islamic Republic of Iran is viewed as a revolutionary state fundamentally opposed to the U.S.-led order in the Middle East, one that actively seeks to undermine American allies and disrupt the flow of global energy resources. The events of 2024 and 2025 have not changed this fundamental dynamic, they have sharpened it. Iran's declining influence, accelerated by the loss of its Syrian ally and the degradation of its proxy networks, validates the long-term American strategy of containment and pressure. Meanwhile, Israel's demonstrated military superiority and its willingness to act decisively against the Iranian nuclear program reinforce its value as a strategic partner. The ongoing U.S. military sales and diplomatic support for Israel, alongside sustained sanctions and political pressure on Iran, are the logical continuation of a policy that has been in place for over 40 years. The attitudes of recent U.S. presidents and Congress reflect this enduring consensus. Despite differences in tone or tactics, from maximum pressure to cautious diplomatic openings, no administration has fundamentally challenged the premise that a strong Israel is good for America and an empowered Iran is not. The Free Iraq from Iran bill is a perfect example of how this worldview translates into concrete policy, aiming to surgically remove Iranian influence from a neighboring state. President Trump's current 2-week deadline for diplomacy before considering military action encapsulates the entire U.S. posture. A preference for peaceful resolution, but an unwavering readiness to back its primary ally. Ultimately, America's policy is a response to the strategic realities of the Middle East. It is a region whose immense energy reserves and critical geographic choke points make its stability a matter of global concern. The U.S. has made a long-term bet that its interests are best served by aligning with a reliable partner like Israel, while containing a disruptive force like Iran. The escalating conflict in June 2025 is not a new chapter, but the latest, most intense expression of a geopolitical story whose central plotline was written long ago and continues to unfold today.